The First World War, a conflict that was supposed to be over by Christmas, but the killing had only just begun. December 1914, the Western Front. Thousands of miles of trenches cut through the frozen earth like open wounds. It was the coldest winter in living memory. Men were not just fighting the enemy, they were fighting the bitter freeze. For months, the machine guns dominated the silence. Any movement above the trenches meant certain death. Between the lines lay no man's land, a frozen graveyard where no living soul dared to walk. But on Christmas Eve, packages arrived. Chocolates, cigarettes, and letters from mothers praying for their sons. Just 50 yards away, the Germans were doing the same. They were not monsters, they were just men, cold and lonely. As the sun set on Christmas Eve, a strange silence fell over the battlefield. The guns finally stopped. Around midnight, British sentries saw something impossible. Tiny lights were appearing along the German trench line. They weren't flares, they were candles placed on tiny Christmas trees. Suddenly, a sound drifted across the frozen no man's land. It wasn't a battle cry, it was a song. Still nacht, Heilige Nacht. The Germans were singing Silent Night. The British soldiers listened in shock. Slowly, hesitantly, they began to sing back. The first Noel, the angel did say. For an hour, the two armies sang carols to each other. The hate began to melt away in the cold night air. Then, a German voice shouted across the darkness. You know shoot, we know shoot. It was a promise, a fragile promise in the middle of hell. Christmas morning, 1914, a thick mist covered the battlefield. Slowly, nervously, a single German soldier climbed out of his trench. He had no rifle. He walked into no man's land with his hands up. The British officers shouted, "Don't trust them, it's a trap." But curiosity was stronger than fear. One British soldier climbed out to meet him, then another, and another. Suddenly, hundreds of men from both sides were climbing out of the mud. They met in the middle of the field. Men who had been trying to kill each other just hours before were now shaking hands. They exchanged gifts.
Thanks,
The Germans
I'm
gave
starving.
sausages and cigars, the British gave plum pudding and buttons. They realized they were fighting men who were exactly like themselves. And then the most legendary moment of the war happened. Someone produced a football. On the frozen, cratered ground of no man's land, the British and the Germans played a game. Coats were used as goalposts. The ground was slippery with ice. There was no referee and no rules, just laughter. For a few hours, the war didn't exist. There were no generals, no orders, no hatred, just young men playing a game in the snow.
That's a goal, boys.
History tells us the Germans won 3 goals to 2, but the score didn't matter. What mattered was the humanity. But peace could not last. When the generals heard what was happening, they were furious. They called it treason. Orders were screamed down the lines, resume firing immediately. Any man who refuses will be shot. Slowly, the soldiers returned to their trenches. The football was put away. The candles blew out. A captain fired a pistol into the air to signal the end of the truce. The machine guns were reloaded. The silence returned, but it was different now. The men stared across the field at their new friends, knowing that tomorrow they would have to kill them. The Christmas Truce of 1914 was never repeated. It remains a singular moment in history, a flickering candle of hope in a world of darkness.